Thanks for joining me. The theme of this is kind of me going through the image that I've created here and giving you an idea of how we created it. So the idea for this came from the client, and the client is Weyes, a band or a musician in LA who approached me. I don't know, I think it was not last year, the year before, so 2018. And the brief was to basically build a room under the water. So they wanted to have the album was called Titanic Rising. So they wanted to have this feeling of being under the water and of this room or someone's life kind of being submerged. So Natalie, the artist of Weyes, had this idea, I think, of taking her kind of teenage bedroom and putting it under the water. So it looked like it was, possibly rising itself out of the depth. And so they approached me to build this. Well, to shoot it to start with, actually. It was just, they had a set designer that they were going to use and build this room. So I had the studio just recently built, so it was going to be the first big project we did at the studio. And I was very excited about it. It was, right up my alley in terms of concept. So we had some back and forth. We kind of talked about stuff. We talked about logistics. I talked to their set designer, and we had 2 days set aside to shoot this. So 1 day for building it and 1 day for shooting it. And the day came and we started getting set up for this. And I'm going to try and find you some other sort of behind the scenes images. But so what we ended up having was a set designer who had never built a set underwater before. And it was something that was just not going to really work the way it was being built. And so my studio, which is, this is what my studio looks like, is it's a backyard swimming pool. But it's been designed by me for what I'm wanting to do, which is build sets in here. And so on the day, we had this set designer who was trying to do something that was really not going to work. They wanted to just suspend some walls or some panels to make the walls in the pool, and then have a floor and some furniture. And basically what was happening was everything was being pushed around by the water. As water does, it likes to move things. And so it was basically just billowing out, and it kind of looked a little budget, which was not the look that we were going for, I think. And in the end, we decided to move on without that set designer. And I had been, in my sleepless nights and my insomnia, building in my brain a way to build a set underwater that would work. So the client took a chance on me, and we decided to build this underwater set. Now, the kind of brief for that was something that was going to be able to hold all the furniture and stuff we wanted to put in there, and also be able to have things on the walls and a window and curtains and all that sort of stuff. So it was taking all of that and making something that was going to work with the limited resources we had, and also the limited kind of crew. So in terms of crew, we had Jenny, who's assisted me a lot over the last few years, and she's an amazing cinematographer herself. We had Ryan Waller, who's also an awesome underwater guy, helping out. And then we had basically the guys from the management company, from the record label, and the artist herself. So we kind of had about 5 people that we had working on this. So I'm just going to go through some of these behind the scenes kind of shots, and what you can get an idea of is the sort of crap we were trying to put in this set. So what we wanted to do was to make it look pretty realistic and quite quite genre specific. So it was very much going to be the 80s. And so Natalie and I think some friends of hers decided to hit the Goodwill stores, and they ended up picking up all this really dated, wonderfully dated furniture and props. And it was great. So they had so much stuff. I mean, you can see in this picture where half the props aren't even in there, that we've got this awesome, metal bed that we have. There's like the dresser, and the tape deck, the keyboard. There's a record player down here, a fan, all this sort of stuff. But the problem with having all this stuff is that you have to be able to make it sync. You have to make it stay in the set. And with some things, so like with the bed, that was going to sync on its own because it's made of metal. It's not going to have to be weighed down. But the mattress that goes on that bed would not sync. It was ridiculous. I think we ended up having about 80 pounds of weight on that, and it still wouldn't go under easily. And that was all the weight we had. So putting all that weight on the mattress was not going to be, it meant we didn't have weights for other things. And we had a lot of things that we needed to sync. So what we ended up doing was basically gutting the mattress. I don't know if we have a shot of that anywhere, but we ended up basically taking this mattress and cutting the insides out of it. So we ended up just having just the form of a mattress. So the beauty of that meant that it had nothing inside it. It kind of weighed very little. And I think we ended up putting a couple of shot bags in there to make it sink. And then, rebuilt the whole frame and put it together. And then, so that actually sunk really well. The other stuff though, was not so easy. The dresser was made of wood, and it was made of particle board. I don't know if you call it the same thing in America, but it's it's basically chipboard. It's made of wood chips that's all glued together, and it's it's really cheap wood, and most furniture is made out of it these days. But the problem with that is that it floats really well, and so having to put weights inside that to get it to sink. Things like the stereo and the keyboard though, they just sunk by themselves, so they were totally fine. Same with the fan. It worked beautifully. So what we ended up having to do was build a set. So we had to build 3 walls and a floor. And so we ended up spreading out all over my backyard and building these walls. And what I wanted to do was build it out of we couldn't really build it out of wood, because if we build it out of wood, then we have to try and sink the whole thing, and that is not easy. The more weight we have to put on this thing, the harder it's going to be. And using metal would have solved that. I mean, metal is really heavy underwater, so it would have sunk. But the problem with that is that then now you've got metal in the water, and it's going to start to rust. And if someone scratches themselves with it, it's going to cut them. It's it's less than ideal. So having PVC means that it's fairly neutrally buoyant in the water, which means that it doesn't float too much. And it also means it was soft, so if we got hit by anything, it would be fine, and we could cut this with just regular power tools. So it was going to be fine. So we ended up building the structure out of that. And what we did, let me see if I can find these. I've got some time-lapse videos of us building this, which I think is really interesting. And we'll see if We'll see if my little GoPro thing works properly. But the idea was to be able to build these walls that we could put in the pool ourselves easily. And using things like drywall or, the normal building products weren't going to work, because as soon as they hit the water, they start to disintegrate. And getting rid of that problem meant using a lot of plastic products, which is totally fine. And plastic's great under the water. See if I can get this to scroll. Problem with time lapse is you end up with thousands of photos, and it's just a pain in the ass. Bear with me. Okay. So you can see here. So this is a bit of a time lapse of the walls going up. So you can see that we've built a base. We've got carpet on there. We're putting the walls up, putting trim in. It's because we wanted this to look like a real room. Like it wanted to look as realistic as possible. So having those details just kind of made that illusion even better. We worked into the night. It was a pretty late one. But we did some great stuff. We kind of got it where we wanted it to be, which was good. So once it was built and it was all stable, then we came in the next day and we could sink it in the pool. Actually, I think that night we ended up putting the base of the set in the water, just to kind of get it in there and get it ready. So this is me and Ryan putting the base in, and then I think we lay the carpet on top. Just wanted to get the carpet in there and kind of get everything settled so that the water wasn't going to be all foggy the next day. Oh, we got the bed in. Yeah. So these things went in the night before, and they sat there and they sat overnight to kind of let them acclimate, I guess, to kind of be ready to go in the water. And then the next day we ended up jumping in and putting all these, everything in the set. So I think I got a good one here. Yeah, so this time lapse is pretty cool. And guys, feel free to ask questions if you want. There's a questions box on the side there on the Facebook Live. If there's anything that I'm going over you don't understand or you got questions, totally feel free. I'm happy to talk about this. So this was the time lapse of us putting the set together in the water. So this is me, Ryan, and Jenny Baumert under the water. And you can see we've already got some posters on the walls. It's starting to look like an actual set. One question was, what am I using for the floor? The floor is basically just it's what's called corrugated plastic. So it's a sort of thing that for sale signs are made of. You can buy it at Home Depot. It's just a very simple plastic board. And so going through this time lapse, you can see, the walls are going together, and you can see how they're flapping in the water there. It's like the wind has picked them up, and that's why you need a set that is built nice and strong. If it's not connected properly, it'll flap around and it'll tear itself apart because the water just wants to destroy stuff. One of the most interesting things of this was putting the props in the set. So I think there is a shot of me and Ryan and Jenny. Yeah, so we're putting in, all the furniture in there. And I think the weirdest thing was actually making the bed. Yeah. So this is me and Ryan putting sheets and pillows and stuff on the bed. Jenny bringing all the stuff into us. And I think that was one of the most surreal things was building a bed, making a bed underwater, like doing the sheets and the pillows and all that sort of stuff. So that was fun. And then putting all the other props in was interesting. Just kind of dressing the set. And it was meant to look pretty haphazard. Like it's a teenager's bedroom, so it's meant to look messy. It's meant to look dirty. So a lot of the things we ended up just throwing in there. And there was a moment where the set kind of came together. It looked a little too neat. And then we started throwing in just clothing. And you can see the guys putting clothing and just crap around the floor. And it kind of finally came together once we had just a whole bunch of crap on the floor. So that's kind of how we built the set. Yeah, the walls are the same board. But it's a matter of finding a board that works for the look that you're after. The texture and all that sort of stuff. And what you're going to do with it, if you're going to paint it or if you're going to wallpaper it, all that sort of stuff. So once we got that in, and I think I've got another time lapse here of from above, which is also pretty interesting, seeing how all the props and everything go in. Wow, this is such a pain. Scrolling. I mean, to be honest, it was kind of fun putting all these props in and seeing this room come to life. Yeah, I think this is it here. So this is from above. This is once the set's in, I think, and just putting all the props and everything in. You can see all the clothing and stuff floating around. Yeah, that's a fairly boring one. But once we were in there, there was some really cool times for some BTS stuff, and I love this stuff. Just getting in there, and this is just me swimming through with the GoPro. I think Jenny and Ryan are setting up, putting on the props and stuff, but you can see how everything's flowing under the water, like the bed and the curtain, everything. It just looks so surreal and so almost realistic. And just doing this kind of made things kind of work, kind of come together in terms of making this concept work. So, and you can see how all the stereo and all the props and everything. So, Natalie and that did a great job. There's a cassette in the tape deck, and Ryan's pretty stoked about that. So having all these details just made the whole thing come together. And I think there's another one. Yeah, so, how cool is that? I mean, it looks pretty real. The water wasn't too dirty at this point, but the amount of crap that came out of all the furniture and all the bedding was intense. And the water quality just got worse and worse as we went. So all these props and everything were handpicked by Natalie. They've all got some significance to her or to the album, and just gave us so much to play with in terms of shooting and having props in the shot. Stereo, lots of cassettes, and I don't think we had a lot of records, but books and stuff, and that's what Jenny's doing right now. She's weighing down the books to make sure they all don't fly off, which is pretty cool. So yeah, so that's kind of how we built the set. And then in terms of lighting it, we ran behind time really badly. We thought we were going to shoot pretty early. We thought we'd have the daylight to give us some lighting in this. But in terms of our timeline, everything took way longer. And this is the thing with underwater. It's going to take at least 3 times as long to make things work, and things are going to go wrong. So, you know, you kind of have to budget a decent amount of time. The other thing is with doing sets underwater is once all that stuff's in there, it's as soon as it hits the water, it's going to start breaking down. And you'll see later on what I mean by, you know, things will start to melt. And I'll show you what that means. But we ran out of time. So lighting wise, I had hoped to shoot it with some natural light and some strobes, but we also needed to film this because Jenny was going to shoot this on her 16mm Bolex, which is film, and it is a hand cranked camera, and she has an underwater housing for this. So the client, Natalie, had, you know, she was in love with very vintage retro kind of look. So the having stuff shot on film was a really big part of this. They really wanted it to happen. So we needed to light the set in a way that it would look good for the video and for the film as it did for the stills. And for me, that's a very different process because I like to shoot with stills. I mean, with strobes, it means that there's no constant lighting, and that means the set's only lit every time I hit the shutter. So when we lit this, we had to light it practically with constant lighting, and since the light had gone, we had to end up going and getting a what's called a 2K, and that is a hot light, so a light that they would use on a movie set, and it sat in the set. So let me see if I can find a good shot for that. That light, let me see if I got a pull back here. So this is kind of the set, and so we have a light coming through this window here, and that is the 2K light, which is really warm. It's daylight balanced, so it's, you know, it's got a little bit more orange in it than a normal light would. So that's coming through the window, and then I wanted to set up this lamp to run as well. I wanted the lamp to be able to be on because that to me just adds so much more surrealness to it. And I did that with a strobe. So in this shot, this is my strobes set up lighting this set. And so I've got a strobe through this window and I've got a strobe inside the lamp. And it looks pretty good. It's probably a little bright for what we were after. But that's because it was still daylight at this point. We were still working everything out. For us to then be able to set it up for the video, for the film, we had to get that 2K come through the window, and I couldn't use the strobe because it needed to be on the whole time, and that's obviously not how it works. So this is still with the strobes on, and it's looking pretty good. Like, I was happy with how this looked, but then we had to change everything up. So with the constant lights, and this is a shot of it here, the light coming through the window was perfect. It was nice and soft, it was bouncing around, it looked great. But to light the actual lampshade, what I ended up doing was using a thing called a Lume Cube, and it is a little cube LED light that's waterproof. It's made by Lume Cube, and what I did was I got, I think, like 4 of those, and I basically taped them all together and hid them inside the lampshade. So that's why the lamp is now lit, even though there's no strobes going on here. And so this is Natalie in the set, looking really relaxed. And she took to this really quickly, which was great. So once we had it all lit, then we could shoot the video. And Jenny jumped in and did that. And so while she was in there filming the video, I did some GoPro stuff of her doing that so we could get an idea of what it looks like. So on the video, you can see how bright it is in the set, but it was really not this bright. It was a really dark set. It looked pretty much how it looks in the final image. And so Natalie's just getting used to everything. To start with, her breath hold was not great. She would only be down for a couple of seconds. I mean, 20 seconds maybe. But as it went on, she just got better and better. And as it went on, the light got worse and worse because the sun's going down. So we were kind of rushing against the sunlight. But we got some really cool stuff. Even just on the video. There's Jenny with the Bolex. She's filming Natalie swimming, pushing towards the window. Now the thing with the Bolex, and you can see this thing, it's huge. It's actually got a crank. It's actually spring loaded. So there's no batteries in it or anything. You actually wind it up. It's clockwork. And you could hear it ticking down. So if she didn't wind it quite enough, then it would run out quicker than she expected. Which is why that image, or that little bit of footage was really short. I don't know what this is. Oh, so that's what you can see, our 2K on the edge of the pool here. Now this is actually tied. So anytime you're using hot lights around a pool, they have got to be either nowhere near the edge of the pool or tied up. Now we took a risk doing this. We knew what we were doing. It's on a GFCI, so if it did get wet, it was going to cut off and there was no danger to anyone. But it's also tied quite extensively to the edge of to the pool, so there's no way it could fall in. And over here we've actually got a work light, so just a flat LED lamp that we're shooting in to give us some fill because it was getting dark. And then, so Natalie getting a little bit more comfortable, pushing through. And this window, I was so happy with the window because it just made this set. It just gave us something to really deal with. And it really made the whole image just come alive, which was amazing. Let's see what other BTS we have here. So again, pushing into the window. And Natalie's long hair just looked amazing under there. It just really gave it some life. But you see her kind of lose her breath. And so by the end of it, she's down there for a long time, but we weren't filming anymore. I think this might be the last kind of GoPro. So we had a phone, like a broken phone for her to take down there, and then looking through the window, just getting that light happening, and that was amazing. So unfortunately, all that footage that Jenny got didn't turn out because I think the film was probably bad, and so it was really a total waste of not time, but it was just a waste of all that effort, because it was such a cool look, and having that on that 16mm film would have been really cool. So once we get into shooting the stills, the actual album artwork, we had a lot of fun. Just playing around, trying different things. So, you know, from just really close-up stuff to in amongst the curtains. The curtains looked amazing. They had a life of their own. There's my foot. It's my thing. And it was really interesting seeing all the different angles we could get in this set and all the different things that Natalie could do. And one of the things that we found was that if we lost the surface, if we lost the surface of the water at the top of the set, it really changed the whole context of the shot, and it almost seemed like it wasn't underwater. And the problem with it not looking underwater is that, well, what is it? Why have we done all this work if it doesn't look like it's underwater? So in the beginning, we played with a lot of these kind of closer shots, and some of these made it into the album artwork, which is great, but you really need the other ones with the surface to give it context. And so once we kind of realized that, unless it looked really surreal or incredible or she was floating in the middle, we really need to see the surface for it to make sense. Now, the other thing is that because we were shooting not with strobes, we were shooting with constant lighting, there wasn't much light, and I was trying to pull as much light out of this as I could. And so these images are really dark, they're really grainy. But luckily that was a look that they were going for. Having all that grain really added to the look of it, to give it that kind of vintage kind of look. One thing you can see here is that the dresser, and this is what I was saying before about props melting, this dresser is no longer straight. And to be honest, we put the dresser in there, and I think about a minute after we put it in there, we couldn't open the drawers or the doors anymore. It had distorted so much that it was not even holding together anymore. And then when we actually go to pull this out at the end of this at the end of the shoot, it just fell apart. It was just literally, it was like like a biscuit in a hot cup of tea. It was just pulling it out, and it was just falling apart. It was pretty horrible. Things like this that I just love is these sequences that happened, of her just falling and floating. And we have so much content from this, but I think they only really used sort of 5 or 6 images from the whole thing. And that's what happens when you shoot album artwork, is they're only going to use like 3 to 5 shots. But we have so many awesome things in here. And running this through on high speed really gives you an idea of how things looked under the water. We had this iPhone that we strapped a light to, and it was just giving us these really cool shots. And you can kind of see, I think things are a bit out of order, but then this is our there's their manager jumping in, having a bit of a play. And you can kind of see all the different kind of poses and everything we were trying. But the ones that really worked the best, in my mind, were the ones where you could see the surface and see that liquid mirror at the top of the shot. And I think... And this is not the album cover, but this is the back cover of the album, and it's my favorite shot of the ones that they used. It, to me, is just that it just says so much, I think. There's so many different ways that you could look at this and make an assumption. And what I love is that it is an outtake. This is her at the surface getting a breath of air, and it is just her kind of caught in this moment when her hair is sticking to the surface and her body is in this kind of, awkward kind of pose, but it all just works in the whole situation. And so we shot for probably 2 hours, I think, in the set. And as it went, the set just kept melting and disintegrating. We got to a point where we decided to kind of mess things up a bit. And I just got Natalie to kind of just start trashing the room, throwing things around and picking them up and just making a mess down there. And for me, there's some of the fun images, because you've got all this stuff floating. You've got all this cassette tape in the water. Everything's kind of starting to fall over. There's some real life and energy in this room. Just bouncing through. And so some of these are such great shots. Just the way the light works and the way, her pose just looks so good. And this fits into my kind of chaos theory approach to working underwater, is that it's all about making a situation where good things can happen. So having it lit in a way that any angle is going to give you something interesting, that's going to give you something new, means that you'll never know exactly what you're going to get. So I just love this. Again, once we dropped a whole heap of stuff in from the surface, you have to go back in and pick it up again to reset. So that takes a little bit of time. But the pool was heated. I think we did this in September. So Natalie was pretty comfortable, but once you get out of the pool, then it's kind of done. Then you get cold. And then I think we started throwing stuff from above. And the other thing with shooting so dark is that my camera was having trouble focusing. And I think I'd had camera trouble. So I was using my Canon 5D Mark II. And it was... it's not the best in low light, so it was having trouble. So quite a few of these are out of focus, but not too bad. So yeah, seeing some of this stuff again now just totally brings back the shoot for me. And Natalie was so up for just trashing the place and getting stuck in places and getting, going under the covers of the bed and all that sort of stuff. But what you don't see is that we've got safety out on either side of the camera. So I think we had Ryan out on the side, and Jenny was here as well. And they're just ready if anything happened. So there was always someone keeping an eye on her. She always had a way to get out of any situation she was in. And that is the main thing with shooting sets and props underwater, is making sure that you're not going to get caught on it. Or if you do, then you've got someone to help you out. So yeah, this is some of the stuff. Some of my favorite shots of these ones. I do have a single strobe on my camera. I don't think the strobe is turned on. I think I'm just using the modeling light for it to help me focus. And it's actually showing up in the photos as that kind of frontal light source that you're seeing there. And it casts a little bit of shadow. You can see the bit of shadow around her legs and stuff here. So yeah. So as we went over the whole course of the thing, we just trashed the whole set. And I think in a lot of them, there's a real kind of punk aspect to it. And I think that frontal light that I've got here is really giving that kind of, 80s snapshot, that 80s kind of, flash photography sort of look, which I really love in this situation. So in the end, they didn't use a lot of these, I think just because there was probably too much content and they only needed a few shots. This is one of my favorites out of the set. It's so kind of surreal. It looks like she's just hanging off the edge of the off the little desk there. So I'll run this right through to the end. Well, that is the end there, I think. Okay. So in terms of the final shots that they used, this is the cover. So this is the one they chose for the cover of the album. The thing with the album was there was no real artwork over this. So when you bought the album, it only came out on vinyl, I think. It had a plastic wrapper on it, and the plastic wrapper had the name of the album on it. So when you take the plastic wrapper off, the album just looks like this. It's just clean and there's no text or anything on there, which I really like. It's nice that they just kind of left it as it is. And I think there's such a mystery in this pose and in this shot that is just very open to interpretation. The album is called Titanic Rising, and there is this young girl in a flooded room. What does that mean? I have no idea. It's not for me to decide. So this was on the front cover. This was the back cover. This is my favorite shot. And then they used some of the others for promotional stuff. You can see in this how much that dresser is just bowing under the weight of everything. You can see that it's about to basically melt in the water. The other shots they use, so I think they use this for a promo, I think. And then this was a promo as well. This is one of my favorites too, because you've got this cassette just floating in the air, and she's on a phone, kind of a little bit unaware. All these posters too have a meaning for her, so she selected and created a lot of these. I think there's something to do with her family. I think this might be her dad in the middle. Sub Pop is the label that she's on, so check them out. They were really supportive of this project, which was great. And you can see all the books and everything floating up at the surface. By the time we finished this shoot, the room was trashed. There was so much crap everywhere, and to clean it up and to pull all this apart was it was like a environmental cleanup. It was kind of horrible. All the books had started to melt, all the glue melted, pages and everything everywhere. I think it probably took a week, and to clean, but it also, I had to clean the filter of the pool as well, which had so much crap in it, so much gunk. So whenever I do a set shoot in a pool, I basically know that I'm going to have to run the filter for that long, and also change the filter, because it's just going to fill up so quickly. Anytime you're putting fabrics or mattresses or chairs and stuff in the water, it's all the crap that's gotten into it over the years, all the dust, all the horribleness now comes out into the water. And whilst it muddies the water up a bit, it can give you some really nice effects as well. So that's the Weyes Blood album cover shoot. This is where we got to. And it was just amazing. One of my most fun kind of shoots, I think. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to ask. I'm probably going to wrap this up now that I've gone through it all. But yeah, the album had a really good response. People loved the artwork. I was tagged in so many Instagram posts about it. I still get tagged in posts about this. It's still kind of doing the rounds because people are unsure if it's real or not. And it warms my heart to know that this was done entirely in camera, that this is not Photoshop. As much as I love Photoshop, it's so nice to not do it. And this kind of started my journey of building sets and trying to get everything in camera. All the lights are practical. There is not a strobe in that lamp. This lamp actually has a light called a lume cube. So I had 4 lume cubes in that lamp, which are little waterproof LED lights. And in terms of post, we really did not do much. I think it was just lightening up the image itself, and that was it. Maybe some color correction, but really nothing. No healing, no cleaning, anything like that. I think it's just really simple. Let me find. No. So yeah, that's about it, I think. Oh yeah, so one question was, is there a strobe in the lamp? There was a strobe before I put the lume cubes in there, and I used the CNC YSD2, so it was probably a YSD1 at that point, but that's what I put in there to start with. But yeah, ended up taking it out because it wasn't going to work for the film. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's kind of it. I'll see if I can find what we did for post on this. No, not much. I mean, you can see from here, you know, that was the beginning image, and that's the final image. So you can see we just kind of cleaned it up, lightened it up, and then that was it, really. Yeah, great. Well, thanks so much for joining me. This has been the first episode of what I like to call How the Shot Was Got. I will be doing more of these, hopefully regularly, with other photographers as well, and also cinematographers. So I'm wanting to do these kind of videos, breaking down other people's photos and also breaking down scenes in films, so that we can get an idea of what goes into building these things and what goes into creating the images and the movies that we love. So yeah, thanks very much. It's been great, and I'll see you next time.